The research vessel Atlantis Explorer rocked gently on the Pacific waves, 200 miles off the coast of Hawaii. Dr. Sarah Chin stood in the control room, staring at the sonar screen with growing confusion. For 3 days her team had been mapping underwater volcanic formations, but this reading made no sense. "Run the scan again," she told her assistant Marcus. "Something's interfering with the equipment." Marcus tapped the keyboard, and the sonar pulse sent waves down into the darkness below. 2,000 meters down, past where sunlight could reach, the image appeared again. A massive object, perfectly symmetrical with straight edges and right angles. "Nature doesn't make straight lines like that," Sarah whispered. Within hours they deployed their deepest diving drone. The small robot descended through the black water, its lights cutting through clouds of tiny sea creatures. The pressure at this depth would crush a human instantly, but the drone pushed forward, its camera sending live footage back to the ship. At first they saw only darkness and sediment. Then the lights caught something that made the entire crew gasp. A wall of dark metal emerged from the ocean floor, covered in barnacles and coral but unmistakably artificial. The drone followed the wall and the structure kept going. 800 meters long, shaped like a massive teardrop, half buried in the seafloor. "It's a ship," Marcus breathed. "But it can't be. Nothing that big, that deep." Sarah's hands trembled as she zoomed in the camera. The metal showed no rust, no deterioration despite being covered in centuries of sea life. She ordered the drone to take samples of the surrounding sediment. When the results came back, her coffee cup slipped from her fingers. 12,000 years, she said, her voice barely audible. The sediment is 12,000 years old. The discovery exploded across the scientific world. Within 2 weeks, the United States, China, Japan, and the European Union had formed a joint task force. Military ships formed a perimeter around the site while scientists from every discipline imaginable descended on the location. Deep-sea submarines, advanced robots, and experimental drilling equipment arrived by the cargo load. Sarah led a team of 20 scientists in the first attempt to enter the vessel. They used a plasma torch, technology so new it had never been tested at this depth, to cut through what they hoped was an airlock. The metal resisted for hours, glowing orange under the extreme heat, until finally it gave way. The submarine's mechanical arm pulled the door open. Sarah watched the camera feed, expecting water to rush into the ship. Instead, readings showed something impossible. Atmosphere. Breathable air after 12,000 years underwater. "That's not possible," the chief engineer said. "Nothing can maintain pressure seal that long. The power source alone." But it was real. When the first probe entered, it detected oxygen, nitrogen, and temperature readings of exactly 21 degrees Celsius. The ship was still alive. 3 days later, Sarah became one of the first humans to step inside. Wearing a protective suit despite the breathable air, she walked through corridors that seemed frozen in time. The walls were smooth, made of the same indestructible material as the hull. Soft blue lights flickered on as she passed, responding to her presence. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, and Sarah stopped breathing. The room contained chairs, control panels, and workstations. Everything was sized for humans. The doorways were the right height. The chairs fit human proportions perfectly. The control panels had buttons and screens positioned exactly where human hands and eyes would naturally reach. "This ship was built by humans," she said into her radio, her voice shaking. "But that's impossible. 12,000 years ago we were still using stone tools." She moved to the nearest control panel and brushed away a thin layer of sediment. Beneath it, carved into the metal in letters she could read, were 3 words in English: "Welcome home, ancestors." Sarah's team worked around the clock for the next 2 weeks, carefully exploring the massive ship. Each new room brought more impossible discoveries. They found sleeping quarters with beds designed for human comfort. A kitchen area contained equipment for preparing food, with instructions and symbols that looked ancient but somehow made sense. Most shocking was the garden room, where plants from Earth grew under artificial lights, kept alive in some kind of stasis for thousands of years. The ship seemed to recognize them. Doors opened when they approached. Lights turned on in dark corridors. Computer screens flickered to life at the touch of human hands. It was as if the vessel had been waiting for them all along. On the 15th day, Sarah and her team reached what appeared to be the ship's data storage center. The room was filled with strange crystalline structures that glowed with soft blue light. In the center stood a pedestal with a flat surface that looked like glass. "Everything we've found suggests this ship wants us here," Sarah said to Marcus and Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's linguist. "Let's see if it will talk to us." Sarah placed her hand on the glass surface. The room exploded with light. Holographic images filled the air around them, showing star systems and mathematical formulas. Then something appeared that made Sarah's heart stop. A three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system, but the planets were in positions she didn't recognize. "That's not right," Marcus said, checking his tablet. "Jupiter isn't there. Mars is in the wrong position. This map shows our solar system but from thousands of years in the future." Dr. Tanaka was staring at text that had appeared on the walls. Her face had gone pale. "These symbols," she whispered. "They're Proto-Indo-European. The ancient language that gave birth to most modern languages. But it shouldn't exist for another 40,000 years after this ship's age. This makes no sense." The holographic display shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a date. Earth year 52,847 CE. More than 50,000 years in the future. "This can't be real," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. A new image appeared, showing the ship itself traveling through a tunnel of twisted space. Then something went wrong in the display. The tunnel collapsed, and the ship spun wildly through dimensions that hurt to look at. When the chaos ended, the Earth shown in the display was different. Primitive. Ancient. Sarah's hands shook as she navigated through more files. The ship's computer seemed eager to share its information, responding to her thoughts almost before she formed them. She found mission logs, personal diaries, and finally, a video message. A man appeared in the hologram, wearing a uniform of dark blue fabric with strange symbols. He looked tired but determined, with brown eyes that seemed to stare directly at Sarah. "My name is Captain Marcus Rivera," the man said in perfect English. "If you're watching this, then you are our ancestors and you've reached the technological level we hoped for. What I'm about to tell you will seem impossible, but every word is true." The message continued, and the three scientists listened in stunned silence. The captain explained that humanity's future was magnificent. Humans had spread across hundreds of worlds, mastered incredible technology, and become a powerful civilization among the stars. But during an experimental faster-than-light jump, something catastrophic occurred. The ship didn't just travel through space. It traveled backward through time, appearing in Earth's ancient past. "We realized quickly what had happened," Captain Rivera's image said. "We had 10,000 people aboard, enough to start a colony. But we couldn't stay. We couldn't risk changing history, erasing the future we came from. We couldn't risk erasing you." Sarah felt tears running down her face behind her helmet visor. "So we made a choice," the captain continued. "We're leaving you everything you'll need to survive what's coming. Because in our time humanity faced extinction. And the enemy that nearly destroyed us is still out there, waiting. You need to be ready." Sarah spent the next 3 days watching every log that Captain Rivera had left behind. Each video revealed more about humanity's incredible future and the terrible danger that came with it. She barely slept, barely ate, driven by the need to understand the warning these people from the future had died to deliver. The captain's final message was the longest. He sat in what appeared to be the ship's bridge, looking exhausted but calm. Behind him, Sarah could see other crew members working at stations, their faces showing the same quiet determination. "By the time you watch this, my crew and I will be gone," Rivera began. "But you need to know what we learned, what cost us so much to discover. Humanity's future is glorious. We reached the stars, built cities on 100 worlds, created technology that seems like magic. We thought we were alone, the first intelligent species to rise in our corner of the galaxy." The hologram shifted to show images of beautiful colonies on distant planets. Massive cities floating in the clouds of gas giants. Underground settlements on ice worlds. Humanity had truly conquered the stars. "But we were wrong," Rivera continued, his expression darkening. "We weren't the first. Millions of years ago, another civilization existed. They were ancient, powerful, and they destroyed themselves in a war so terrible it left scars across the entire galaxy. Before they died, they created something to make sure no other species would ever grow powerful enough to repeat their mistake." The display showed strange machines, vast and alien, floating in the darkness of space. They looked like enormous geometric shapes made of black metal, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. "We call them the Silence Protocols," Rivera said. "Automated weapons scattered across the galaxy, programmed to activate when any species reaches a certain level of technological advancement. They're patient. They watch. And when a species spreads too far, builds too much, threatens the galactic balance, they strike." Sarah watched in horror as the display showed human colonies being destroyed. Entire planets going dark. Ships trying to fight back, only to be torn apart by weapons that bent physics itself. In Earth year 52821, they came for our homeworld. Rivera's voice was thick with emotion. We had 72 hours of warning. Most of humanity survived only because we evacuated every person we could to underground shelters and distant colonies. Earth's surface was sterilized. 3 billion people died in the first hour. Marcus had joined Sarah to watch this recording. He gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. But humans don't give up, Rivera said, and for the first time he smiled. We studied the enemy. We lost thousands of scientists trying to understand their technology. And finally we found their weakness. These machines are older than human civilization by millions of years. Their programming has flaws. Their targeting systems can be fooled with specific frequencies. Their weapons can be blocked with shields using a particular energy signature. The display showed human ships, redesigned with new technology, fighting back successfully against the alien machines. We won our war, Rivera said. But it took us 300 years and cost us half our colonies. And we realized something terrible. The silence protocols are still out there, still waiting, still watching. And in your time, in our past, humanity is just beginning to reach for the stars. Sarah felt ice in her stomach. We can't tell you directly what to do without risking a paradox, Rivera explained. But we can leave you the tools you'll need. Everything aboard this ship, every piece of technology, every blueprint and formula, is designed to help you defend yourselves when the time comes. The ship itself is programmed to release information slowly, making it appear as if you discovered these things naturally. When the silence protocols finally notice you, you'll be ready. The captain stood and placed his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. We die so that you might live. Make our sacrifice count. Sarah's team discovered the cryogenic bay on the 23rd day of exploration. The massive room contained thousands of sleeping pods arranged in neat rows, each one designed to preserve a human life for centuries. But when Sarah approached the first pod and wiped away the thin layer of dust, her breath caught in her throat. The pod was empty. So was the next one. And the next. Check them all, Sarah ordered, though she already knew what they would find. Her team spread through the bay, opening pod after pod. All 10,000 were empty. Not a single person remained. Marcus found the message first. A large screen on the wall activated when he touched it, showing a video recorded in this very room. Captain Rivera stood before the camera, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, thousands of people filled the bay, all wearing the same blue uniforms. They looked calm, almost peaceful. If you found this room, you're wondering where we went, Rivera said. The answer is simple. We left. All of us. Sarah moved closer to the screen, studying the faces behind the captain. These were normal people. Young and old, different races, different backgrounds. All of them knowing they were recording their final message. We spent months debating what to do, Rivera continued. Some suggested we could stay, live out our lives in hiding, perhaps in the deep ocean or on a remote island. But we're scientists. We understand chaos theory and the butterfly effect. Even one of us surviving could change history in ways we can't predict. We might prevent our own timeline from existing. We might cause something worse. The camera view shifted to show the ship's garden habitat. It was beautiful, filled with earth plants and small trees, with a memorial wall carved from white stone. 10,000 names were engraved on its surface, each one carefully etched by hand. We decided together, Rivera said, his image returning. Every single person aboard this ship voted. The result was unanimous. We would give you everything we could, secure all our knowledge and technology, and then we would leave without a trace. Dr. Tanaka was crying quietly beside Sarah. Marcus had turned away, unable to watch. We built smaller vessels, enough for everyone, Rivera explained. In 12 hours we'll evacuate to different locations around the ancient Earth. We've chosen places where tectonic activity will eventually destroy any trace of our presence. Our ships will sink into volcanic zones. Our bodies will be recycled into the planet itself. In a way, we'll become part of the Earth that our ancestors will walk on. The video shifted to show people saying goodbye to the ship, touching the walls, taking one last look at the vessel that had been their home. Some were crying. Others smiled bravely. All of them walked toward the smaller vessels with their heads held high. We're not sad, Rivera said, returning to face the camera one last time. We're honored. How many people get to sacrifice themselves for the entire human race? How many get to save their own ancestors? Sarah noticed something then. She pulled up the genetic analysis her team had been running on DNA samples found throughout the ship. Her hands shook as she compared the data to modern genetic databases. Oh my God, she whispered. The markers were there, clear as day. These people weren't just humanity's descendants. They were the direct ancestors of people living today. Captain Rivera himself shared 87% genetic similarity with Sarah Chin. She was looking at her own great-great-great-grandmother or grandfather, repeated thousands of times across 50,000 years. And he had chosen to die so that she could exist. The video was ending. Rivera placed his hand over his heart again in that gesture of respect. We leave you 3 scout ships in the southern hangar bay, fully functional and ready to train pilots. We leave you the knowledge to save humanity. We leave you our hope, our dreams and our love. He smiled and it was warm and genuine. Live well, ancestors. Live free. And when you finally reach the stars, remember that we walked there first and we walked there proudly as humans. The screen went dark. 6 months had passed since Sarah Chin first stepped aboard the ship that changed everything. The world she knew had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. At first, governments tried to keep the discovery secret. Military forces surrounded the site. Scientists were sworn to silence. But Captain Rivera had planned for this too. On the 90th day after the ship was opened, it began broadcasting directly to every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth. The captain's message played simultaneously in every language, telling humanity about their future, the coming threat, and the gift left behind. The world stopped. For 3 days people did nothing but watch and listen. Then something remarkable happened. Nations that had been enemies for generations put aside their differences. The threat was too large, too real for humanity to face divided. Sarah now stood in what used to be an empty field in Nevada. Around her, the largest construction project in human history was taking shape. The International Space Defense Initiative headquarters rose from the desert, built with technology that came from the ship but had been carefully adapted to look like natural human innovation. Dr. Chin, they're ready for you, Marcus called from across the facility. Sarah walked through corridors filled with scientists and engineers from every country on Earth. Chinese researchers worked alongside Americans. Russians collaborated with Europeans. Indians, Africans, Australians, all united by a single purpose. Captain Rivera's sacrifice had done more than give them technology. It had given them something humanity had always struggled to find: a reason to work together. The hangar bay was massive, carved deep into the mountain. In its center sat humanity's first true starship, the Unity. It looked nothing like the ancient vessel from the ocean. Human engineers had taken the technology from the future and made it their own, creating something new, something that belonged to this time. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood beside the ship, running final checks. The gravity drive is operating perfectly, she said, unable to hide her excitement. We're actually going to do this. How do you feel? Sarah asked. Terrified. Amazed. Grateful. Yuki smiled. All of it at once. The test flight was scheduled for noon. 3 pilots, trained using the scout ships from Rivera's vessel, would take the Unity beyond Earth's orbit and back. If successful, it would prove that humanity could defend itself when the silence protocols finally noticed them. Sarah climbed to the observation deck, where dignitaries from every nation had gathered. But she walked past them all to a quiet corner where a piece of the memorial wall from the ship had been carefully removed and reinstalled. 10,000 names, carved in stone, honoring people who wouldn't be born for 50,000 years but who had already died for humanity. She found Marcus Rivera's name and placed her hand on it. DNA testing had confirmed what she suspected. Somehow, across the vast gulf of time, she was his direct descendant. The man who died so she could live was her own grandfather, multiplied across centuries. We're ready, a voice announced over the speakers. Sarah watched through the massive windows as the Unity lifted off the ground without sound, without fire or smoke. It simply rose into the air as if gravity no longer applied to it. The ship accelerated upward, faster and faster, until it was just a point of light against the blue sky. Then it vanished, jumping to faster-than-light speed. For 30 seconds, humanity held its breath. Then the ship reappeared exactly where it had left, descending smoothly back to the hangar. The observation deck erupted in cheers and tears. People who had worked themselves to exhaustion for 6 months embraced each other, crying and laughing. But Sarah remained at the memorial wall, her hand still on Rivera's name. We did it, she whispered. We're ready. We'll make you proud. Through the window she could see more ships under construction. Humanity was reaching for the stars, not with the arrogance that had doomed Rivera's timeline, but with wisdom earned through sacrifice. They would explore carefully, build slowly, and when the ancient machines finally came, humanity would be ready. The ship's AI had delivered one final message that morning, the last secret unlocked. You are not just survivors. You are the children who learned from their parents' mistakes before making them. You are humanity's second chance. Make it count. Sarah looked up at the stars and smiled.